I am doing my very first tarot deck review on my YouTube channel. I am so excited to be doing this. I have decided that 2026 is the year that I invest and embark on my YouTube journey. I am so excited to be doing this, to putting more content into this side of my platform, and I hope that you will join me by subscribing, so hit that subscribe button below. It makes the most sense for one of my first main videos here on YouTube to be a tarot deck review because tarot is my bread and butter, but it also makes sense to start with the deck that I learned on, which is the Wild Unknown Tarot. In this video, I'm going to be sharing exactly what I like and what I don't like. I am not going to bullshit you in any way. I am going to give you my honest thoughts. And I will also say I am very late to the game with reviewing decks like this. I have not had a YouTube channel yet. I have done a review on this on my podcast and on my blog, but it took me a while to kind of get into the social media mix of content like this. So I know that I am late to the game, but I'm going to just tell you my thoughts if I think that this is a deck that you should have in your collection if you do not have it already. Now, because I am so late to the game on this, if you do have this deck, which many of you probably do, please let us know in the comments what are your thoughts. I will also be flipping the camera around and showing you the main sections of this deck, so the majors, the minors, and then the chords, and also talk a little bit about some of the kind of details of the deck, like packaging, card size, shiny or glossy finish on the cardstock, things like that. So just straight out of the gate, I am going to say that this is my favorite tarot deck. It's my absolute favorite. I don't use it as much anymore simply because I have been walking the journey and the road of tarot with this deck since the very beginning. This deck is my genesis into tarot. And because of that, that might most likely also be swaying my personal opinion of how much I love this deck, that it's so intimate and it's so personal on a different level than just a tarot deck. You know what I mean? Like, this is the one that opened me into this craft. It helped me find myself. And because of that, it carries a weight and has an energy that none of my other tarot decks do. Starting off with some very basic information, this deck was first published, self-published by Kim Krans back in 2012. Kim Krans is a now infamous artist, author. She is the brand behind the Wild Unknown. So we started off with her tarot deck, and then we got 3 oracle decks: the Animal Spirit deck, the Archetypes deck, and the Alchemy deck. I have all of those, and I will be reviewing them in upcoming videos. So I received my deck, this very deck, back in 2016 as a Christmas present. If you go back and watch the introduction to me video, you will see that I needed and wanted to start learning tarot as a mere hobby after I was going through an incredible kind of dark night of the soul, and I just wanted something that would pique my interest, get me learning, get me excited about something. What this deck did, it brought me home to myself. And again, I go through that all in that video, but I do not think I would have had the same experience with tarot had I started learning on a different tarot deck. I do not think that another tarot deck would have had the same effect on me as this one. And that is exactly why this one is my favorite. Let's start with some specifications of the deck before we get into the imagery itself. I want to leave you on a beautiful end note with her imagery. It's incredible. But the first things first is that we have this beautiful cardboard box. See if my ring light won't pick that up as much. And I will say that because this is the deck that I was gifted back in 2016, some things may have changed, but I can only go with what I have. So we have this really nice cardboard box. Opens easily. We have a drawstring to pull our cards out. And then we have some nice imagery on the inside of the box. And I do like that she really pays attention to detail. She does that with all of her decks. So we have some nice color here, and on the back it says that this is the 2nd edition complete 78 card deck illustrated by Kim Krans. Includes major and minor arcana and fold out starter guide. So here is the starter guide. It's this little paper pamphlet, and I do still have it. I now keep this in my desk. I don't keep it with the tarot deck and the cards because it was starting to get kind of worn, and there were like little tears and stuff on like the edges when I kept taking it out and putting it back in. So now it stays in my desk, but I actually need to get it framed, and I'll show you why in a second. But it opens up and it's this little paper pamphlet, and I don't know if this wants to show up, but with each of these you get little easy keywords with each of the cards, and then it kind of talks about the suits. Like with the wands, it says that it is the suit of creativity and inspiration ruled by the element of fire. These cards relate to our ambitions, goals, and dreams. They mark the beginning of all ventures of the mind and spirit. So you get that with the wands, the cups, the swords, and then finally the pentacles. And then if you turn it over, you get the major arcana. Same thing, you get a little keyword for each of them, and then you get some pictures of potential spreads, a card a day, past, present, future, and then the Celtic cross. But if you open this, you get something really beautiful, which is a card, an image of one of the tarot cards, which is the Daughter of Swords. And this is why I really want to get it framed. And when I was gifted this deck, the cards were like, the tarot deck itself was one purchase, and the tarot guidebook was another purchase. Now, I did lean into using the guidebook pretty heavily at the very beginning, but the more that I started to use the guidebook, the more I started to realize that I didn't love the way the cards were talked about in this guidebook. And I mean that as no shade to Kim Krans. Like, her writing, her creations have only gotten better. And that is the way it is with all of us. I'm sure my 10th tarot deck review is going to be better than this review, but if I'm just being honest, I will say that the way that the guidebook was written, I didn't love. Now, I'm glad that I have it. One other thing, though, that I don't love is that because these two were not the same, it's not in like a big keepsake box the way it comes now, they don't fit. So it's kind of like a very small thing. I totally get that, but it's just like, you kind of just want everything to kind of fit into the big box, and then you just have everything all together. And you will get that now. When you go on Amazon now, or Barnes & Noble, or anything like that now, you will get that. Some other things that may have changed over time are things like the card size, the finish, the card stock. As they start to do editions, they print new editions of decks like this. Some of those things get tweaked over time. What I can tell you is that my cards measure 2.75 inches by 4.75 inches. So they are a pretty good card size. They're not too small, but they're also not too big. I have really tiny hands. So some of these decks that she's made since then, like the archetype decks with the huge circle cards, are so hard for me to shuffle. And then the alchemy ones are more of like a honeycomb shape. Those are so hard for me to shuffle because of my tiny hands. But this is a really good size. The cardstock is a thicker stock, which I do enjoy. It feels more durable, and the finish on this is more of a satin or a soft gloss or more of a matte finish. I can tell you I always prefer a finish like this because, one, I think it just looks a little bit more high-end. I think it just gives it a little bit more of maybe an expensive quality, and it also makes photographing and videoing so much easier because my ring light is not picking up the gloss finish. I will say one of the cons with a more thicker cardstock, even though it is more durable and again it does feel more high-end expensive, it makes shuffling a little bit harder for someone like me, someone who has very tiny hands. Sometimes the real bendy cards that have a high gloss finish, they get slippy and they get bendy, and which means that you can kind of shuffle them a little bit easier without worry of, creasing these cards. The other thing I will say is that the matte, as beautiful as it is much harder to keep clean. I have had incidences with me sitting here, you know, pulling a card with my cup of coffee, and the cards that have a high gloss finish, I can easily kind of wipe, you know, that spillage up or that little drop up and nothing happens. With these, it's going to stain. So with a matte finish or, you know, card stocks like that, they're a little bit harder to keep clean. And while I do love this, because now these cards have like this kind of yellowed used effect, which just means they're so loved, they are a little harder to keep as pristine. I love this backing because it's not too simple. There is intricacies and like, you know, creating all those teeny tiny scales, but it's not too complex. I think that this backing speaks to the soul and the energy of this deck, and it's just appeasing to look at. I have some decks that we will get into with their reviews that I'm like, I just don't like the way this looks, but this one is so, so beautiful. Now I am going to flip the camera around and show you the cards in their parts. So the major arcana, the minor arcana, and then the core cards. So now we are going to look at the major arcana. You can see them all laid out on my table. And then we zoom in and we start with, of course, our Fool. And starting with the creation line or the first line and just kind of moving down, you can immediately see this unpolished, raw, and wild feel to these cards that only Kim Krans can give. Moving on to the next line, we start to see at how with Kim Krans' artwork, everything is intentional. The way the background lines all move in to the center point and this mirroring between the diamond and the cats. We see intentional color choices like here in the lines or strings of our dream catcher in the Wheel of Fortune, and how there's intentional coloring that's very simplistic. Her artwork is not overly done, which gives it that raw feel. But there's so much of a story to the images. Like here with the bird, it is actually a very dark scene, but we see exactly what's happening. And again, we see here this understanding of coloring, of using contrast, of using lines in intentional ways. And then finally, with our last line, our evolution line, we see this continuity between the cards and the wild world that we all live in. Things are not overly fluffy, things are not overly done. There is this sense of symbolism and imagery or artistic license, like here, especially with the world. We have this bright center of just illuminescence, and then we have this flowering, we have transformation with the snakeskin, and we have all the spectrum of colors. Moving on to the minors, we have these beautiful images just already. We see where we don't need an overly elaborate image to speak to what the card's meaning is. So here we have this seed, this starting point that leads to growth, leads to expansion, leads to strength. The profound images, she just brings them in and down in such a beautiful way. Now, some card images like this may be a little hard to interpret, but that's where I believe that we are also called to learn how to intuitively build our understanding of these cards as well. Maybe a little challenging, absolutely beautiful. This is one of my favorite cards in the Pentacles. Moving on to swords, we see that Kim Krans was not playing when she drew this suit. We have some beautiful symbolism to the Rider-Waite, like here with the Three of Swords, and we do have some beautiful images like the Four. But overall, we see it how she gave the sword suit that raw, aggressive, polarizing vibe, even kind of stark in a way that the swords naturally speak to. If you need any excuse to buy this deck, let it be the cups. The cups have such stories to them. Again, even in simple ways. We can see exactly and start to build an intuitive understanding of this card just by the image that Kim Krans has given us. The cups have such an evoking quality to them again, which speaks to the meaning of the suit. So Kim Krans knew what she was doing with each and every card. This suit makes me feel, and again, we're in cups, so that is what we are meant to feel. Lastly, for our minors and for our suits, we have the wands. Now, the wands, I will be honest and say, I think might be the hardest to learn of all of the minors, because other than very specific cards like this one, we don't have animals. We don't really have a ton of a scene being depicted. We have some things happening, like with the ace, we have this beautiful radiation, this kind of fiery burst, and these blooms on the wand. But this one is the most simplistic of all of the minor suits, and again, doesn't give us a ton to work with. So this is one that is really maybe going to be a challenge and a test, kind of a rise to the occasion of learning how to read this card, these cards, and this suit intuitively. And then finally, we have our courts in each suit. Now, all of the all of the courts in each suit have a similar theme of animals. So we have deer for pentacles, owls for swords, swans for cups, and snakes for wands. The symbolism is clear, again, incredibly connected to the wild world, which I love. I find that the imagery in these is just enough for me to have some good things to read on, like here, but it does also challenge me to read intuitively as well. Some of them are very simplistic. I think the wands overall has the most story behind it, or the pentacles. Like here we see our mother of wands guarding her nest of eggs, and we have the fiery lightning bolt. So overall, I feel that the suits, or the courts in the suit, give us a ton to work with and are so beautiful to read. I love pulling these forward in readings, especially with clients, because there's a whole realm of conversation that I can use to help them understand how the card is coming forward in their reading. So here are my final thoughts. Do I think you should have this deck in your collection? Yes. Yes, I do. I think that this deck provides something that I still have not gotten from any other tarot deck that I own. Now, I have seen some people say that this is not a deck that would be good for beginners, and I have to disagree. One, because I learned on this deck, so if I can do it, you can do it. It is going to be a little bit more of creating an energetic and intuitive connection to the deck. It's not going to be as straightforward tarot that we get with maybe like the Rider-Waite. Now, that's not to say that the Rider-Waite doesn't have some beautiful imagery. This is just different. So this one is maybe going to make you pull on some of your intuitive understandings or your connection to the wild world a little bit more. But in my personal opinion, I think that only helps your readings. I have been creating a master Google spreadsheet of all of the reviews that I have ever done. One, this helps keep my brain organized as I start to go through these reviews. But two, it is helpful as I start to do these reviews to give you something where you can go back and kind of compare the reviews that I've done from like this one to the next one will be the Ostara Tarot, which is the next deck that I purchased for myself. I think it was in 2017. So please check out the Google spreadsheet, and I will also say it is linked in the description box. I do also have the blog post and the podcast. I may start to move over more to YouTube from the podcast depending on how I find my feed. So if you like this content and being a part of the Wolf Pack here on YouTube as opposed to anywhere else, please give this video a thumbs up and follow along with me as I give you more content on tarot, witchcraft, and wild sovereignty. But I think I have made my thoughts on this pretty clear. Buy this deck. If you do not have it, buy it. Now, I don't get any sort of kickback, affiliate, nothing. I just love this deck. Of all my decks, tarot, oracle, I don't care. This is my deck. This is the deck that speaks the most profoundly to just the way I feel inside my little wild wolf child body, but it also gives me just that same type of energy in my readings for myself, my readings with clients. It just provides a depth that, again, no other tarot deck has ever had. So I know it's biased because I learned on this deck, but I truly feel that if you do not have this deck in your collection, it is going to provide something of value to your readings, even if you've been reading 10 years like me or longer. I just think that this is one that is so beautiful and profound. So 5 out of 5, I recommend this deck. And until next time, Wolfchild, take care.